That is the first sound on the recording. Is Yuri on? All right, so we're picking up from yesterday. We had our 4 questions. You guys should have the sheets, right, with the questions in front of you. I'm just going to review them for the recording, just for the tape, for anybody who's listening, if anybody is. Right, so we had 2 questions on Rashi that Tosfos had asked. Question number 1, how could Rashi say the source of Hayavesh is Zekeli Vanvehu, where the Gemara itself says that the source is creates Hadar? Right, you guys remember this? Right, sounds familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. And number 2, how could Rashi say the source of Hayavesh being a problem is Zekeli Vanvehu, if Zekeli Vanvehu is only ever a requirement that you should try to get L'chachila, but it's never in the in the rest of the Torah it's never a problem b'di'eved, but over here Hayavesh is a psul b'di'eved. Those are the 2 questions on Rashi. And then we had 2 questions involving the Rambam. Question number 1, right? We saw that the Rambam said that if you pick up a dry lulav, so a dry lulav is pasul, but in a sha'as adchak, it's okay, but that it only applies to lulav. So one question on the Rambam was, why does it apply only to lulav, this, so to speak, like this heter in sha'as adchak? And number 2 is, how could there even be a heter altogether in sha'as adchak if a dry lulav is a disqualified entity? That was the term we kept using yesterday, disqualified entity. So if a dry lulav is a disqualified entity, how all of a sudden, just because it's sha'as adchak, it's no longer disqualified? How can it be okay? Okay, Tamir, yeah, go ahead.
I think for number 3,
yeah,
I'm just throwing it out there. I just
go
came
for
up
it.
with something. Maybe he's talking about a case where the other three minim, he has them there, even Chas Chak. Like it's possible for him to get it from a tree or something,
right,
wherever it grows.
Right.
In the area that it's in, they have it growing there.
Right, but he just can't get a lulav.
Yeah.
So,
is that what we're getting at with this?
Well, here's my question for you. So the question I have back for you then is like this: consider so what you're basically saying is that this is the Rambam's way of expressing that this case is where you can't get a lulav, but you can get the other 3.
Okay.
So what would be the halacha in this case? A guy lives somewhere where he can't get an esrog except a dry esrog, but he can get the other 3.
I see what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if this applied equally to all 4 minim, then the halacha in that case should be that it's okay also. It should be kosher. The esrog, the dry esrog in that case should be kosher too.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not. So the question is, why not? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 3 sounds like a factual question to me, to be honest. I mean, we're talking about Lulav the whole time. I don't know why you think we're talking Dalamina. We're only talking Lulav.
Read the halakha in the Rambam. You have it in front of you?
What's Lulav?
The halakha aleph in the Rambam.
Maybe you just get read Hebrew.
Okay. So I'll read it to you. So the halakha there in the Rambam, he starts ches aleph with arba'as
You should just
minin.
read these 2 before we try to answer any more questions. We didn't do this yesterday.
We did them, yeah. We
Did
did.
you see yesterday?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the ches aleph, that first halakha in the Rambam, he does mention all 4 minim.
Okay.
So you can't really answer by saying that it's. What's that?
The first time he's saying Shaya Anchad Mehein Yavesh. It doesn't say specifically Lulav.
Right, correct. So meaning when he's bringing in these psulim in Ches Aleph, he's until the end, until the line where he says that the Sha'as Hadchak halacha applies exclusively to Lulav, everything else was applying equally to all 4 minim.
Like what? Can you just
Yeah, sure. So Ches Aleph, he says like this. He says, Arba'as minin ha'elu, these 4 different species, right? Lulav, Esrog, Hadas, and Arava. He says, Shehein Lulav, Hadas, Va'arava, V'Esrog. Shehaya echad mehen yavesh o gazul o ganuv. So if any one of them is dried out or it's stolen, afilu achar yesh, that means even after, if it's stolen, even after the owner gives up hope of getting it back. O shehaya me'ashera ha'ne'evedes, achal pisha batlu ha'asher mil'avda, or if any one of these 4 species comes from a tree which was worshipped for avodah zarah, o shehaya shel ir hanidachas, or it comes from a city which has the halacha is near Nidachas is a city where the whole city turns to Avodah Zarah. So you have to destroy such a city. So and he goes further, and there's a whole bunch of cases further. So all of these halachos, he's going to say that these are all possible. So in general, all these halachos apply equally to all 4 of the species. And then at the very end, and the very last line, he says ubishas adchak o bishas asakana. So if it's a shas adchak case, basically lulav hayavesh kasher. So in such a case, if you can't get any other lulav other than a dry lulav, then it's kosher. Of a lo sha'ar haminim, but the psul of dryness, which does apply to hadas and rava and esrog. So if you're in a sha'as adchak vis-a-vis one of those of the species, then it's still not okay.
Said Kili or was talking about the Raminim or just Lulav?
Zekeli Avihu is a Rashi thing. The Ram doesn't really bring it in, but for Rashi.
It just seems that we're talking about Lulav the whole time. I don't really see the problem in saying that 3. Just talking about Lulav. I don't see the problem.
No, but he's not. He's talking about all 4 minim. All these.
I don't see what's wrong with Shas Tachak. I just don't see the problem. It's No, it's just
Then
it's
there
just
must be
it's
consensus
just Lulav.
difference.
Like it's I don't know. It's something to do with.
But
I
then-
think it goes back to something that's dedicated to the pre HaTorah. But I mean, of course, then my premise also was to be that those two specific only talk about Lulav.
Right, but they don't. I'll tell you right now. Pri HaTorah in the pasuk itself is referring to Esrog.
Right, I'm saying we're trying to learn out of there. I guess
Right.
I can say it, but the puzzle itself.
Yeah, but the thing is that you can't say that those psukim really apply just to lulav, because let's say a not shas hadchak case, just a regular case, where you can get any lulav that you want, right? So a dry lulav in that case is puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And that psul is because of, pick your pasuk. It's either because of Pri HaTorah, if you hold like Tosfos, or it's because of Zekeli Van Veyu, if you hold like Rashi. But either
so
way,
that-
dryness is a psul, and it's a psul in all four minim. So that pasuk definitely applies.
Come from the same source.
Yeah, same source.
Oh, so
Yeah.
that's then fine.
Yeah, so then you're a little stuck.
I just tried reading on. Is that what he answers like the answer or not?
Say it again.
I just read on a little bit.
Okay.
Does that have to do with anything that we're doing? Or
Oh, that's the second halacha there.
yeah, just like I just read through the whole thing.
Oh,
here.
well, the second one. Oh, this the whole first paragraph or the second
Yeah.
paragraph?
First paragraph.
We've already read that. That's not gonna. I mean, if there's anything there that you see that you think will help you, then great. But I'm not trying to use anything in his formulation specifically there that I think is going to help us. So basically, now we're at a point where we have these questions, right? I mean, and now we're starting to give these answers. But I'm not going to go back to the text really to try and make my move or anything in terms of these questions. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think I might have gained a yard or
a few inches.
Or 1.5.
Not a first down yet.
Not for example. I think Rashi though, because it's a bigger transgression. I could really see what route Torah Holt's trying to run. I think we could really get a first down, but I don't know. Number four was like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean we
fullback dive. I don't think we could do it, but
a lot of football metaphors in this.
yeah, a lot of football. We played yesterday, so
I got it. So we spoke yesterday a little bit at the end, right? You guys remember that about methodology, about which question to tackle?
I don't know if I buy it by this case though. I don't know
Okay, go ahead. What do you think?
I tried. I mean, I'm saying just that's born out of just my response. To that, I don't hold this case. I try to go number 4. I think 3 might be impossible. three might be impossible, but
okay.
4 I tried to define. I told you I tried to define what exactly is. I tried to crack what Shas Chak is.
Right.
Really, I'm trying to figure out if there's anything absolute here.
Right.
Because this whole number 4 question comes from a bunch of pretentious absolutes. We need to find out if there are any actual absolutes. So first I tried to understand. First the b'diavad is every case where b'diavad if you go the other route.
Right, we're talking about
right, and then what a Shas Chak is if.
Right.
Like really, what are the parameters of Shas Chak? And we said it has to be Shem Lulav, and let's separate it and say or Shem Palm branch. Let's say that. So that Shem Palm branch.
Right. All right. Let me try. Anybody else have any thoughts in terms of how to approach it? Guys, no. Not really. It's a little tricky. Right. Anybody want to throw anything else out there? No, David, Yaakov. No?
I got nothing.
Nothing. Okay. So we talked a little bit. Let's try to take some steps. All right. So we talked yesterday a little bit. The very last point that we discussed was something that I think Dylan had hit on. Right. We said that the way I'm viewing it, I think the approach to dealing with the issues in the sugya, I'm going to try to take it through the Rambam. We discussed that yesterday, and based on one of Dylan's points, so we said that if you guys remember yesterday, I asked you guys how would you kind of formulate in a logical category the issue of dryness, and we ended up saying that dryness is a disqualification in the entity. I'm using that term a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys remember that? Yep. So, and we said, so if it's a disqualified entity, right, then you're basically stuck because now it's a Sha'as Adchak, but if it's a disqualified entity, bottom line is Sha'as Adchak shouldn't make any difference. A disqualified entity is a disqualified entity. So we made a point at the very end of the shir yesterday that there must be something that's not completely true about that. Because if that's true, then you're just stuck. So we said it must be that the issue of dryness by Lulav, which makes it not okay, it can't be that like the logical categorization of that psul is that it's a disqualification in the entity. You guys remember this point from yesterday a little bit? Or ringing a bell?
Yeah.
David?
I don't remember these points.
I remember. Okay. But you understand what I'm saying now?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So you see why it seems true?
Yeah.
That if it's just absolutely a disqualification in the entity, you're kind of stuck?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Tamir? Okay. So the question at this point then becomes, well, we know factually that there is a psul of dryness in a lulav, that if you have a dry lulav, it's no good. But if we can't formulate it strictly, we can't formulate like the logical categorization of it by saying that it's a psul in the chefza. You guys know the term chefza? It's one of those brisker terms. Right? Chefza basically means entity. Right? So instead of saying disqualification in the entity, we could be a little more from, and we could say it's a psul in the chefza. Okay, but that means the same thing as disqualification in the entity, just in a different language. I don't love using the brisker terms all the time because I think then sometimes you lose a little bit of clarity. But let's leave it.
Cool.
So, you guys good? Okay. So the question is, if we don't want to say that it's strictly a psul in the chefza, that it's strictly a disqualification in the entity, can we find another way of formulating the problem of dryness, which will help us out through these problems, which will basically allow for it to be the case that in a sha'as adchak by lulav, it wouldn't be a problem anymore.
The situation.
Okay.
If you have access to that bottom rung of the Evid,
Right.
you cannot use
You can't use something worse.
any less.
Okay.
You must use the Vidyevet. That's
Right.
the only one you would say.
So that's certainly factually true. So what you said is definitely true. But I think what we're looking for is more something akin to something that's in the same vein as saying it's a psul in the chefza. Is there a different way we can formulate it, a different idea that we can impute to it that would kind of conceptualize what you're saying? Because what you're saying is true, that you gotta use, if you can use something good, then you have to. But where does that come from is kind of what I'm asking. You know what I mean? You give it a shot, Yaakov.
And you didn't like the situation?
I don't think that fully conceptualizes it. I think it's true, but I think we got to flesh it out a little bit more. Yeah, Yaakov, what do you got?
Shame lulav is the same thing as saying chasa, right?
So, well, what do you mean by shame lulav? Can you put it in a sentence a little
Like
bit?
the loving says of it being lulav.
That it's got to have a shame lulav.
Yeah, is it the same thing?
Well, either way, I think you're going to kind of run into the same problem. Is if you say that dryness, it may or may not be true that dryness is part of that once it's dry, it loses the shame lulav. Maybe that's true. And if you say, basically, it sounds like you're saying yes, that if it's dry, it no longer has a shame lulav anymore.
Right.
But it's basically the same thing as saying the chefza, because then you sort of run into the same problem, right? Because shas l'chak, it doesn't have a shame lulav anymore. How can you take it?
Okay, another Sfar darts. I'll call it. I'm trying to more accurately say din situation, a din in relativity.
Okay.
Like if you have better, you
Right.
must use better.
Right. That's good. That's a good step. I think we still have a little further to go, but I think that's true. You basically you have to use the thing that relatively the best thing that's available. Yeah, I think that's a good, precise way of saying what you're saying.
Maintaining the one premise of absolute that we're only talking about entities that have shame palm branch.
Well,
It must be a palm branch.
That's a universal. You're not going to change
universal
that. Yeah. That's always going to be true. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Well, I'll give you a minute to think about it. Say it again.
It's operating on the chiyuv.
Go ahead. What do you mean by that?
Like even if it's dried out, it's still a lulav.
Okay.
But right, so in the normal case, the chiyuv is to take a lulav which is hitter. So when you have a better lulav, you can't take it. I dried out lulav. But in the case of shas chak, when there isn't a better one, then you can say that's I guess you putter in this case, so it's still good.
Well, if you're putter, then you don't have to take it at all.
Okay.
Those are two different things,
Yeah, because that wasn't the worst.
So, but it sounds like we have to go back to Psukim right now, and something we have. I'm not to say, let's say the wording of the pasuk, but the idea of hitter and Keli Aveh. We're not you're saying we don't have to make reverse
We
that right
certainly can. That might be helpful.
But you don't have to?
I don't know if you have to, but you certainly can.
now. Okay.
That might give you I think here's how I would put it. I think this question is the important question. Like, what formulation can we come up with?
It's a violation of the hitter. Dryness is a very easy violation of the hitter.
But the question is, what is hitter? What is the requirement of hitter?
Right. Well,
So the
what variant does hitter have in this situation?
The question really is, what we're saying that the issue of Hayavesh is a problem in hitter. Well, what is hitter? The natural way to think about hitter is that it's a certain qualification. If you don't have hitter, the entity is not a qualified entity anymore.
That's what hitter means, or is it not a hitter entity?
Well, and if you're not Yotze without it, then it means it's not qualified.
No, for sure. But normally that's not how hitter works, right? Normally
But here it is.
But
Right.
here it is.
That's a separate question. That's a separate
Here
question.
hitter is.
Well, let's worry about here.
That really is the big question.
Well, we're gonna get to that afterwards, though. Let's worry about here first.
No, I agree with your question.
Yeah.
That's the big question. That how did hitter suddenly become the defining entity? I like the originals better. I don't know. How did the line of hitter become the line for Pasul Yotze?
That's really a separate question. Let's leave that for now.
That's not what you just said.
No, that's a separate question. Let's leave that for now. What I'm saying is basically, I'm just reiterating my question in different words. Right? We're kind of dancing around a little bit, but I'm just reiterating my question. My question is, Hayavesh is a problem, and where that problem comes from is hidur, right? And it's a problem that if it's Hayavesh, then it's no good, right? In a regular case. Leave Shas L'chak for a second, right? And again, I'm just going to say it again. If the way you'd normally approach it is you'd say that the lack of hidur here, the dryness, is a disqualification in the entity of Lulav. That's the way that's kind of the natural way you'd conceive of it. Is there a different way we can conceive of it, of hidur and of dryness? You can put it in whichever term you want, such that formulation will allow for a Shas Adchak to be okay. You follow? I'm asking the same question as I've been, that we've been discussing the whole time.
Yeah.
All right, so Tamir says that dryness is not a necessary feature of Lulav, right? That he's trying to take a step in terms of the svara that way.
What do you say hidur is? What do you phrase it as hidur?
You could say hidur is not a necessary feature. You could say dryness is not necessary. Either way. But my question to you then is like this: let's say it's not a case of Shas Adchak. Let's say there's lots of Lulavim around, right?
Yeah.
You can get a dry one, a not dry one. You had your pick, right? And now you take a dry one. So is it pasul or is it kosher?
It's kosher, but it's not hidur.
Are you yotze or you're not yotze?
You're potentially yotze.
Not yotze.
Not yotze at
The
all.
Ram says it's pasul.
Okay.
So what you're saying, the idea you're trying to go with, would imply that you should be yotze. But that's the problem is that it's not the fact. The fact is that you're not yotze. So that kind of trips up what you're trying to say, I think, a little bit.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Probably.
Okay. Okay. All right. Maybe I'll push forward and try to show you guys where I'm trying to go with this.
So the whole feature thing is just...
Well, I mean...
Is it a step or not?
To say that it's not a necessary feature?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's getting at the same point we've been trying to make.
Okay.
I think it's sort of a different way of saying what we've been trying to say, which is that you can't say that bottom line is completely necessary, and we've actually, I think, been going one step further than that. We've been saying, and therefore it can't be that it's a psul in the chefza, that it's a disqualification in the entity. But the question is, where does that leave us? Okay? The question is where to go from here, basically. That's what we've been asking the whole time. All right, so let me try to say something. Yeah? David?
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan, you there? Okay. So here's what I think. Okay, so the goal here is going to be, to try to find a formulation for the issue of dryness, like we've been saying the whole time, such that in the case of Shas Adchak, even though it's dry, it'll still be okay. Right? Make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, till now, we've been saying that the problem of dryness is that once it's dry, the entity is disqualified. And that's what ran us into all this trouble. So, let's propose a different formulation of the problem of dryness. Okay? Maybe it's not the case that when a lulav is dry, it's a disqualification in the entity. But rather, maybe there's a halacha that the person doing the mitzvah of lulav has to bring a beautiful lulav. He has to endeavor to bring a beautiful lulav. In other words, it's not a halacha that dryness is a problem because it disqualifies the entity, but dryness is a problem because if the person brings a dry lulav, he's not a good bringer of a lulav now. He's not a good doer of mitzvahs lulav. Why? Because a doer of mitzvahs lulav has to bring a beautiful lulav. You guys see the difference between the two?
Yeah, so it's on the gavra.
It's in the gavra, basically. I'm trying to avoid using the term because I think the term is sort of a shortcut, but effectively, yeah, it's a halacha in the gavra. That the gavra, the gavra ha'oseh, the guy who's doing the mitzvah, he has certain requirements on him. That part of doing mitzvahs lulav means that he has to go out of his way to bring a beautiful lulav.
And in this case, you're saying that...
Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I mean, you're gonna have to have a nice hunky modifier in there to excuse him for Shas D'chak, because you could run it back and for 90 you should have played out last year.
Say it again.
So
You have to what?
Let's say you
You're saying it in the Gavra.
Right.
No, you can't.
Okay. You're gonna have to give me a modifier about how the Gavra somehow you can put it wherever you want, but how somehow he gets excused for the Shas.
So the question. So Shas D'chak, how does he get excused? So Tamir, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I forgot already.
Something about the gavra and the shas l'chak. Why it should be okay?
Well, you could say that the obligation is to bring like the best lube that you can. So
Right.
In this case, he is.
Right, I think that's what you said before.
If you wait till
So-
the last minute, would you call it the best?
Oh, no, no.
So now we get into let's
I
let's
remember.
time out.
Lines.
Dylan, time out. Sorry, 1 second, guys. Let's not confuse the issue here. Where the line is drawn is not our question. When is it a shas
You
l'chak
get
and when is it not?
without lines. I don't understand. Like I'm saying, it seems very silly to me. I don't know.
Well, it's
We give all these theories in the abstract, and the second it comes down to like, well, what actually does the idea we're talking about look like? And they're like, nah, it doesn't. It does matter. Like,
but
if you wait 5 minutes before
time
something
out.
starts,
Time
and then
out,
you
time
start,
out.
like, does that matter?
yes, of course that matters. But if you wait 3 days, does that matter? Where to draw the line is a separate question. There's two questions, and it's not unimportant. Of course, it's not unimportant.
I just don't really get how
Of
to
course,
get handle
let
on
me
the
finish.
idea
Let me
without
finish. It's not that it's unimportant. Of course, it's important. But before we get to the step of defining where the line is, let's first understand the concept. It's necessary to define where the line is because the whole point of this is to learn halacha, and we got to
I don't even want halacha.
1 second.
Sorry.
Of course, we have to know how this comes out, in terms of where the line is. There's got to be some line, but there's two separate questions here. One question of what is the concept that it's employing, and then a secondary question of once we know the concept, where practically does where's the line of that concept get drawn? But I think let's first focus on the concept, and then afterwards, if we want, we can deal with where the line gets drawn. Okay?
I don't really care about halacha. I would like to
that's
know
an out of context quote.
what your abstract idea of a shear is. People always, every time you ask a technical question, people always think, nah, I don't care about halacha.
Right.
But the second something goes from 0 to 1, it
Okay, so
exists,
I
like to know really what you can say. I feel like you're playing half the game.
Okay, so I'll answer your question this way. If this is helpful, then I'll say it this way. If it's helpful, then great. If not, I can't go into any more depth on it.
You're going to say normative? You're going to say that?
Yeah, to a reasonable extent.
Okay.
Whatever extent is reasonable. And what that is, you'll figure out. Okay? Alright, let's leave it for now. But in terms of the basic idea, you guys get what I'm saying? That as opposed to it being a psul in the chefza, hadar is something that the gavra has to chase down. Has to go for. It's a chiyuv on the gavra. So as a doer of the mitzvah, you have to go out of your way. There's a chiyuv on you to get a beautiful lulav. Now, if it's the case, and if you don't, then your lulav's puzzle. Right? You're not yotzei. Now, if you don't go out of your way, then that's a problem. But if you did everything you could to get beautiful daled minim, you went out of your way as much as you could within normative, reasonable expectations. But now it's a shas l'chak and you just can't help it. So can you say that the gavra violated his requirement to get a beautiful lulav?
Obviously not.
Obviously not. He did what he could. So in that case, it'd still be yotzei. So that explains how the Gemara can say that in shas l'chak, even though it's dry, so it's okay. Okay? You guys understand?
So the chiyuv is on the actual entity there.
What do you mean? Sorry,
By
say
the
it again.
minim.
By the minim, you mean as opposed to lulav, or?
Yeah.
Well, let's hold off on 1 second. I said it vaguely on purpose. let's make it more precise. Certainly by lulav, what I just said is true according to the Rambam. That the gavra has a chiyuv to go out of his way to get a beautiful lulav. There's a requirement of hadar for the gavra, and if he doesn't, so it's a problem. But if it's a shas l'chak, then he did everything he could, so it's not a problem. He's still yotzei. Right? So we've answered question 4. How can it be that in shas l'chak, if dryness is a psul in the chefza, if there's a disqualification in the entity, how can it be that in shas l'chak all of a sudden it's okay? So we answer by saying, well, your premise was wrong. It's not a psul in the chefza. It's a requirement of the gavra. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's on the guy.
On the guy. Okay?
He should have gone out and got a nice, beautiful lulav.
Right.
But instead he didn't, but it's still okay.
Well, but are you talking about shas, a case where he couldn't help it, or he could help it?
Yeah.
He couldn't help it. So he should have gone out of his way, but he did go out of his way as much as he could. That's what shas l'chak means. So because of that, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Make sense? Okay. Now you're hitting on something a minute ago, Yaakov. You want to take that train of thought in terms of the lula versus the minim now?
Yeah.
Dylan, you understand what I'm trying to say? I know you have reservations about it, but you get the basic idea?
Does he have the same chiyuv as the gavra?
One sec, tell me, one second.
In general, not by,
Okay.
I heard you saying.
All right, separate question, I think, but okay.
It is separate as well. I heard you
Okay.
saying.
All right, tell me, what were you saying?
Doesn't he have a din in the gavra, a different din in the gavra when it comes to the other 3 minim?
Yeah, so now we get to the other 3 minim, but now we're basically getting to
Or
question 3.
Does it have the same? Do you have the same chiyuv in the gavra as the lulav or not?
So what do you say?
I would say yes, but according to the Rambam, no.
You would say yes, because, why would you say yes?
Because you need all four minim. Without one.
Well, they're a unit.
They're a unit. It's one mitzvah. So Tamir is basically, and I think Yaakov was raising the question before. So now let's get to the question of why is Lulav being treated differently than the other minim? Right? Question 3, basically.
Yeah.
So the question is, you guys know the phrase "mimanafshach"? You ever hear that?
Yeah.
In the Gemara? I'll clarify what it means in case give it a little refresher. Mimanafshach means either way you go, you're going into a problem, right? So mimanafshach are the other 3 minim, right? Hadas and Arava and Esrog, are they a psul in the chefza, or are they a din and there's a halacha in the gavra? So if they're so Tamir is saying they should be a psul, they should be a din in the gavra. Why? And so like Yaakov pointed out, it should be that a din in the gavra because it's one mitzvah and all the minim should be consistent, right? So if you go that way, then great. Except that if that were true, that if all 4 minim were a halacha in the gavra, so by arava and hadas and a shas adchak, if all you have is a dry hadas and a dry arava,
okay.
you should be okay. And yet we know that the Rambam holds you're not, right?
Yeah.
So apparently the Rambam holds that those are halacha din in the psul and the chefza. But if that's true, so now we're no longer consistent between the minim, right? So now our third question, which started out as a she'ela, has now morphed into a kushya, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You clear what I'm trying to say, Dylan? Yeah. Okay. So let's try to think about that.
Rambam maintains that it's a din in the gavra, but it's impossible to not find the good.
Hadas or arava or esrog?
Yeah, it's a shaila answer.
Sorry, say it
I
again.
don't know.
No, go ahead.
No,
Give it a shot.
if he maintains that for Lulav it's possible, you don't find the hitter
Right.
if the gavra puts the necessary work.
Right.
But for the other 3, it's impossible.
It's impossible to have a shas adchak.
It's
impossible that you won't be able to find one that is
a nice
attractive.
one. Yeah.
I don't think so because.
I mean, I personally think that's terrible. I really hope he doesn't say that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I hate
not
that.
it. I mean, first of all, it's not really reasonable in the sense that esrog is generally hard to find. A good esrog is hard to find than a good lulav, especially in certain areas. But it doesn't seem to be what the Rambam is indicating. All right, Dave, you want me to catch you up a little bit?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
That's not
All
bad.
right. We're basically we're just to again summarize the question. The question we're left with at this point still is: it seems like based on the shas adchak halachos according to the Rambam, it seems that the halacha of dryness by lulav is a requirement of the gavra, and by hadas arava and esrog it's a psul in the chefza. So how do we manage that inconsistency? Okay, so Tamir started saying, so there are different components to the mitzvah. That's true. But the question still is, why should those different components be treated differently from each other? And for example, Hadas, Arava, and Esrog are all treated the same way. So is there a reason that Lulav is treated differently? I mean, it's true. It's not impossible that it be treated differently, because you're right, they are different components. But how is it at all reasonable that it should be treated differently, given everything we've said? Why should it be that there are these 2 different formulations, one of the gavra and one of the chefza? Or am I wrong about that? Maybe it's not the case that lulav is the gavra and the other minim are a psul and the chefza. Maybe that's a bad assumption. But if it is a bad assumption, we need to reformulate.
Maybe when it said that by that applies to lulav, you can use it in the shas adchak and not the other 3. Meaning maybe just total speculation. Maybe back then, maybe it was more common for you to find a lulav, then
right.
it would be easier to find like a tree with a ravos on there.
Right.
Or natural.
Yeah. So Dylan said the same exact thing. But if the Ram doesn't say that specifically, first of all, I don't think that's really the way the Ram operates. I think in general, even if it's not a common thing, if it's the case that it could be that you could run into shas adchak by a thing, even if it doesn't normally happen that you run into shas adchak, I think he would still say it, just based on my experience with the Rambam. And I think even if you're right, you should probably say something like, you don't have, ain't tzarich lomar. You don't have to bring up the case of the other 3 minim because it just never happens. That's the kind of thing that I would think he should say outright.
Right.
So I guess I agree. It's a little too speculative, I think, for our purposes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe it is a din in the gavra.
Say it again.
Maybe the other 3 are din in the gavra.
Okay. So if they're a din in the gavra, so now what's the question we're left with? So now shas adchak, the gavra tried his best, and the only arava he could get is a dry arava, so he should be able to use it, but he can't. So why can't he?
Maybe the other 3 have like a different status to them in a sense. Like they have different psulim or something like that.
Okay.
Trying to figure something out, but I can't get that.
Okay, now go. Think. Take your time. Not on the spot.
Yeah.
Go ahead, what are you saying?
Is there a difference in the formulation of the mitzvah during that?
I mean, it's the same chiyuv. You have to pick it up as the mitzvah.
Okay,
You know,
that's
it's
not
pretty much the same mitzvah. Yeah.
So the Lakachtan is going all them.
Yeah, Lakantam, it's predicating all those things, yeah. Yeah.
And Nua, okay, I guess.
Yeah. Ninu is like, it's an important part of the mitzvah. It's not, even if you don't do Niyanuim, you're still Yotze, but it applies equally to all of them also, yeah. Right, go ahead, so what are you saying?
I'm considering maybe it's in the din of both. It's both in the Gavra and in the Hefza.
Maybe it's a din in the Gavra and the Chefza. So, for all four?
For just three.
For just the three. So if it's a din in both, so you're saying that it has the din of the Gavra from Lulav. So meaning it's consistent with Lulav in that it also has the din in the Gavra.
But it has
Right?
something more than
But
that.
it has something extra, it also has a din in the Chefza. And therefore, in the case of Shas Chak, vis-a-vis the din in the Gavra, you would be okay, because the Gavra tried his best, right? He couldn't get anything but a dry esrog, fine, but he tried his best. So it would be okay, except that there's also a din in the Chefza, which makes it not okay. Okay, that's creative. But if that's true, why is there not also that extra din in the Chefza by Lulav?
Because it has to be, doesn't have to be completely.
No, think about it. It's
doesn't
creative.
have to be completely dry for it to be possible.
Say it again?
Like, if the lulav was completely dry, as long as it has the same tzura of it, it's okay. And he went out of his way, but that's all he has.
Right, but the question is, to whatever degree there's dryness, right?
Yeah.
Each of these things has dryness. You know, it could be dry.
But
Each one has a line of dryness.
with the other three minim, it could be a little bit dry and still kosher.
But by Lulav also could be a little bit dry and still kosher.
Mm-hmm.
Now take a second. It's creative. Okay, so I think Tamir's creative idea is a very good one. So I think it's a good approach to try and approach this issue.
Only that creative word is a pity word.
I know.
Okay.
Here it's very self-serving, because if this is my idea, then I'm very creative too.
Right, okay.
So I think Tamir's approach is good. So the question, we're still left with some issues, but let's I'm just going to say it again just so it's formulated so we can move off of it, okay? So Tamir is basically saying like this. In the case of Lulav, we've seen that there's a requirement that the Gavra brings a beautiful Lulav. But in the case, but now we're stuck because in the other three minim, because in Shas Chak, a dry esrog is still a problem, seems like it's a psul in the chefza. So what happened to the psul in the Gavra? To the requirement for the Gavra, right? So Tamir says, maybe it's still there. Maybe they're both there, right? Maybe the requirement of the Gavra that we saw by Lulav, that the Gavra has to bring a beautiful Lulav, maybe that exists by Esrog and Hadas and Arava as well. Yeah, there's a requirement that the Gavra brings a beautiful Hadas and a beautiful Arava and a beautiful Esrog, right? If that's the case, we've been asking the whole time, why in Shas Chak is it not okay to bring a dry one? The Gavra did his best. So Tamir says, maybe in those cases, by those minim, there's also a requirement that he bring, let me put it this way, there's also a psul in the chefza of dryness, right? There has to be a beautiful chefza. And if it's dry, it lacks in the chefza, right? That's what he's saying, right?
Basically.
Yeah.
That's the gist of it.
So now the question that I asked Tamir is, okay, that's very nice, but there's still, we made a step, and it's a good creative step, but now the question is, right, let's appreciate it, right? Saw something as a possibility and went with it. It was good. But now the question is, if that's true, what happens by Lulav? Now it's inconsistent the other way. There's this issue of a psul in the chefza by Hadas Arava and Esrog. Why shouldn't it be a psul in the chefza by Lulav? Right? That's what I was asking you, and that's where we basically stopped till now. Right? You guys see it? David, you there? Yaakov?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to say it like this, right? This is the idea that we had also, and we basically got to this question, and then we had an idea to address this question. So we basically said like this. Maybe there is a requirement, maybe there's an issue, maybe there's a psul in the chefza of dryness in general, by all four of the minim. Conceptually. Maybe it applies to all four of the minim. Okay? But when we say there's a psul in the chefza of dryness, what do we mean? We mean that when the chefza becomes ruined by dryness, it's now disqualified. Right? That makes sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys ever like keep your esrogim, hadasim, arabos, and lulav after sukkahs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you haven't. I'll tell you what happens. So what happens to your esrog after a while?
Dries out.
Dries out, shrivels up, and it gets all brown, right?
Yeah.
So esrog is a certain type of fruit. When it shrivels up and it gets all brown, it's certainly lacking in like its beauty as a fruit, right? I mean, it's basically lost its identity as a fruit almost. Like it's all shriveled and like nothing, right? Okay. What happens to hadasim arabos when they get all dry? The leaves,
They also lose their identity.
the leaves become all brittle and they basically just like fall apart. Okay, it doesn't just turn brown.
But the
they
tzura
basically
of
fall.
lulav is still there.
But when a lulav becomes dry, it turns white. But as in terms of the way a lulav looks and in terms of its structure, we wouldn't say that dryness ruins the entity of a lulav because it's still there. It's just all white and dried out. Esrog. So what you guys are
How long
talking
does it take
about?
to get white though?
So I couldn't.
How long? I'm not sure. But however long it takes.
I agree with you though, because I think
Yeah.
I mean the kid's got a lulav in there still.
It takes a while. I don't know how long it takes. It does turn white though. Believe me.
You've seen this
I've seen
happen?
it. Yes, I've seen it.
So even if
I've kept my lulav for like if we leave it outside our house,
even
it
if the other
happens.
three are dry, as long as I still have the tzura, it's still.
Well, I don't want to put it in terms of tzura. I want to put it this way. In terms of the categorization, like the concept that I'm hitting on is like this. Dryness is the problem. It's not a tzura phenomenon. It's that dryness is a problem in the chefza by all the minim. But it can only ever be a problem in the chefza if it's a ruination of the chefza. If it's like
It's not ruined
It
yet.
only becomes
Yeah,
absolute
Yeah.
if it
it only becomes a psul, a disqualification
Once it's ruined.
once it ruins the entity. Okay?
But if it's not ruined, then
But if it's not ruined, then it's not a psul in the chefza. Okay? So conceptually, this psul, this disqualification in the entity of the various minim of dryness, conceptually it applies to each of them. But it can't manifest by lulav because there's no case where lulav becomes ruined as an entity due to dryness. The lulav always maintains its form and its integrity even when it becomes all dried out. But when an esrog or a hadas or an arava becomes dried out, it becomes all gross and it falls apart and it becomes disgusting and shriveled, you know? So dryness has to really affect the entity for it to be a psul in the entity. You guys see what I'm saying?
So that's what they're on.
So by lulav, one second.
Which is
So by
still
So by lulav, since the entity isn't really fully affected, whereas the other three are, even though conceptually all four of the minim have this psul, have this disqualification in the entity due to dryness, conceptually it applies to all of them, but it can't manifest by lulav because it just practically doesn't happen. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So now, so wait, so let me ask you a question. So now, by the dalad minim, by lulav and hadas and arava and esrog, is there a psul in the gavra by any of them?
No.
Not what I'm saying.
So
You said it yourself. By lulav and hadas and arava and esrog, by all four of the minim.
Yeah.
Is there a requirement that the gavra has to bring a beautiful one, right?
Yes.
By lulav, yeah.
Yeah.
By the others also,
Yeah.
all of them. That was your point. It could be by lulav. It could be present in all the others too. Now again, in all four minim, is there an issue of a psul of disqualification in the entity?
No.
Yeah, there is a psul of dryness.
There is a psul of dryness. Does that apply to all four?
It applies only to one.
Well,
No, it applies to three,
Right?
Not the
No,
lulav.
it applies to all four in potentia, but it never gets actualized.
That's exactly
because
right.
it doesn't ruin the essential identity of the.
Doesn't ruin the entity of the lulav. Doesn't mess it up physically. Okay, you guys see what I'm saying? That's the formulation. So now we take Tamir's idea that it's true that lulav has a requirement of the gavra to bring a beautiful lulav, and now we're saying that all the other three minim have that too. But on top of that, the other three minim also have this psul in the chefza of dryness. And what about the inconsistency? Well, it's not inconsistent. That psul in the chefza applies to all four minim, to lulav as well. It just exactly like you said, it just can't be actualized as a psul because practically it never comes into play because it doesn't ruin the lulav. See what I'm saying?
Doesn't get to the point by the lulav where it ruins it.
It doesn't happen. Dryness, the way that dryness operates by lulav, the way it physically affects it, isn't the same as the way it physically affects the other three.
So can we say it's a non-essential? It's a non-defining factor. Or it's not essential.
In terms of like the way it physically
I'll say
affects it.
non-defining. Yeah.
You could put it that way. You can put it that
So
way.
It does, or it is.
I would just say, I think I'm fine with the way I said it. If you think the way that they're saying it that way is sharper, I'm fine with that. The point is that it doesn't ruin the entity. Physically, it doesn't ruin it, There's even a shita in the Talmud Yerushalmi that holds that a dried out lulav isn't a problem of hadar altogether. It's not hadar. It doesn't, it's no longer not beautiful even once it's dry.
Oh, so it's still hitter.
It's still hither. We don't hold that way.
Right.
And even the shita in the Bali that holds that dryness isn't a problem, it's not because it's still hither, it's just he holds you don't even require hither. But there is a shita that holds that it's still hitter, which is a good raya to this idea that, and it's only lulav that they talk about. So it's a good raya to the idea that it points to the fact that the drying out by lulav isn't the ruination of the entity. The haraya, there's some shita in the Yerushalmi, it's obscure and we don't hold by it, but the fact that there could be such a shita points to the fact that dryness isn't the ruination of the lulav the same way it is by the other minim. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
David, you following? Is it there?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I'll point out that's also kind of a good support to, I think, to this way of going is that there's a big question in the Rishonim. I've been basically saying that I've been going like one of the Rishonim, but there's a big question. How dry is dry by a lulav? Is it when it turns white? Is it when it hits a certain level of dryness after a certain amount of time? Let's keep it simple and go like one of the Rishonim, and we've been saying white. But whichever Rishon you pick is fine, but this one I think just keeps it simple. But the fact that there's such a wide question about how dry is dry by lulav points to the fact that dryness doesn't affect it the same way. By hadas, there's no question how dry is dry. Dry means when the thing falls apart because it's dry. It's impacted physically in a direct way. Exactly. Exactly. By the other meaning, there's no question of how dry is dry because it's fully nicker when it's dry. It's ruined. By lulav, the reason there could even be such a question in the Rishonim is due to this issue that we're hitting on, that it's not such a ruination when it turns dry. You know what I mean? All right. So you guys see the idea? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's talk methodology a little bit for a minute now. So. Till now, I've basically presented what I think is the kind of the logical structure of the answer to this question by Lulav, right? And by the Dalamine, right? Basically, till now, we've answered questions 3 and 4, right? Agree?
Yeah. Pretty
much? Okay. Dylan, yeah? Okay. So, but here's the thing. Categorically, in terms of like the categories of the psul and the chefza and the requirement of the gavra, everything we've said makes sense, and it's sort of, it has beauty to it, I think. It's nice. There's an appeal. It's clean, yeah. But the question is, I'm sure you guys have discussed a little bit so far, the what and the why, right? Have you talked about that at all? And like in Shir, like the question of answering the what versus answering the why type of question, or not really?
Yeah,
we
get
into it a little bit? Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
So, no? Okay. But it comes up?
We get the chai, yeah.
Oh, you got it, okay. So, there's different types of whys, which makes this a little bit tricky. But, whereas, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that whereas we've explained the logical structure, and it's beautiful, that in the mitzvah of Daled Minim, there's a requirement both for the gavra to take a beautiful lulav and also a psul of hidur in the chefza. Why should that be? It's funny that there's a mitzvah where it almost seems like redundant in a way, Like, why should there be an issue where you require hidur both in the chefza, but now there's also halakha that the gavra has to bring a beautiful lulav? Like, normally we find by the kiyum of, and I don't want to go into this tangent yet. We'll get there. But normally, by like in general in mitzvahs, there's a phenomenon of zekeli vanveyo, right? So that generally seems to be a phenomenon of the gavra. It's not the chefza, it seems to me. But you only have that. You don't have both. What I'm basically trying to say is, it's a little funny that you should have both. Why should it be?
I don't see any. Well, that was the exact nature of your response to me. Is that my question was going to ask for both, and you said. The reason why I think yours is sharper is because when ruination just is talking about the loss of an entity.
Right.
Which is why I don't think the requirement is to be hitter for the chefza. It's just that some things ruin the chefza.
But that's not what I'm saying, though. Maybe I should go back and clarify that idea. I'm not saying that when it turns dry by an esrog, it's no longer an esrog. What I'm saying is that physically the esrog is messed up. I don't mean that it loses the shame esrog necessarily. What I mean is that the esrog is now like a fully messed up esrog.
Oh, so when you say ruination, you mean ruination of the hitter?
Of the physicality of the thing, yeah.
Of hitter.
When I say ruination, I'm not referring to ruination of hitter per se. I'm not saying ruination of hitter, but it's in the framework of hitter, correct. I'm saying ruination of the thing physically produces a problem vis-a-vis hitter. That's correct.
But it doesn't... Oh, man.
Doesn't mean it's not an esrog.
Oh, okay.
But the question that I'm going back to now becomes a question of, it's strange that you should have this kind of formulation. The reason I'm pointing this out, and I mentioned methodology before, is that logical categorization of a thing, like we've done thus far, we set up the phenomenon of the requirement of the gavra versus the psul and the chefza, right? That's important and it's necessary, I think, and it's for you guys. I think it's especially important to be able to see that type of logical, categorical maneuvering clearly. I think that's an important skill in learning. But ultimately, the goal in learning is to try to understand the mitzvahs of the Torah. So, number one, what I'm saying is that, first of all, it's a little funny that it should have both of these categories present. That's just a little curious. And number two, it would be nice if we could understand what about mitzvahs lulav specifically dictates that you should have both. It's really the same question. I'm just trying to kind of point out different aspects of this question. But I'm basically trying to ask, why should there be both of these things here, the requirement of the gavra and the psul and the chefza, and what can we learn about mitzvahs lulav from the fact that there are both of those things? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like we're at a point now where I don't know if we should get back to the psukim necessarily, but we should go back to kind of a general sense of what is it about this mitzvah of lulav that causes it to be this way. You know what I'm saying? Listen 1 second, Dylan. Dylan, 1 second.
I'm sorry.
You got other guys. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tamir, you know what I'm asking?
Kind of.
Okay, guys. What's unclear about it? Is something specifically unclear?
What's the main question exactly?
The question is basically, we've said now that logically there's a requirement of the gavra to get a beautiful lulav for all four minim.
Yeah.
And there's a psul and lechefza of dryness for all four minim. It doesn't manifest by lulav, it doesn't actualize by lulav, but it's there by all four minim in principle, right?
Why is the lulav sticking out basically?
Well, why? Not really. We explain why the lulav is sticking out because physically it's impacted by dryness differently. The question now is, in general, in this mitzvah of daled minim, it's strange that dryness is a problem both as a psul in the chefza and that there's also this requirement for the gavra to go to try to get a not dry lulav. Both of those things emerge from hiddur, right? The problem is, the issue is that the gavra has to get a beautiful lulav and a dry lulav is not beautiful. And the issue is that the chefza has to be beautiful and a dry chefza is not beautiful. But it's strange that there should be a requirement both for the gavra to pursue hiddur and that there's a psul in the chefza of hiddur. It's like it's almost redundant. Why should you have pick one Torah, pick one God? Like why is it formulated in both of these things? And what I'm saying, kind of as an extension of that question, is it seems that there should be something about this mitzvah of daled minim, in specific, as opposed to other mitzvahs in the Torah, that you'd have both of these seemingly redundant requirements.
Without one, you wouldn't have the other then.
Say it again?
Without one, you wouldn't have the other, I guess.
It doesn't have to be that way. I could certainly conceive of a
If
mitzvah.
you didn't have gavra, are you saying like why do we need both?
Yeah, like if you didn't have the gavra, you could certainly conceive of a mitzvah where you only have a problem in the chefza where it's not hiddur, but you don't have a separate halacha of the gavra needing to go pursue it.
But if there's no gavra, then I wouldn't go out of my way to get a beautiful lulav.
Certainly you would, because you wouldn't be yotzei without it, because your chefza would be puzzle. If you didn't, you'd be a really bad guy. Maybe you are.
So I can see it without the chefza, but with the gavra.
With just the gavra.
With just the gavra, okay, fine.
Okay, fine.
I would know to go out of my way.
Right.
But without the chefza.
But here's what I'm saying. You're saying if there was just a psul and a chefza, that's what you mean, right? That's the way you think, right?
No,
Say it again? I'm a little confused. Sorry.
I'm saying that if we didn't have chefza,
yeah,
we would still understand that, okay, fine, we have to go out of our way to get a beautiful lulav.
Okay. Right.
But I don't think we could have...
You don't think we could have just chefza and not gavra?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that if you just had a halacha that the chefza is puzzle if it's not mehudar, if it's not hiddur, right? So you would know, certainly factually, that you have to go out of your way to get it, because if you just have chefza, it means that a non-beautiful chefza is puzzle. So you got to go out of your way to get it as much as you can, because otherwise you're just not going to be yotzei the mitzvah.
Even if we didn't have one, we'd still end up having it.
Say that. What do you mean by that? Sorry.
You'd still have hiddur.
You'd still have hiddur, but I'm saying if we didn't know gavra, somehow we'd still manage to get back to it.
Well, it wouldn't be a halacha of the gavra. It would be a halacha of the chefza. It would be puzzle. But in point of fact, when people did this mitzvah, they would have to get chefzos that aren't dry.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like I'm saying,
but
even if we didn't have gavra, like we didn't learn gavra, we didn't go out of our way.
Right.
Somehow we'd still get it.
It wouldn't exist as a separate category in the halacha. It would still happen that people, tried to get it. It still happen. It would still happen. That's true. So why do we need it?
Yeah.
Why do we have both? Yeah, come back to the question. In other words, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Dylan, you gonna say something? No. Okay, I thought you were gonna. Do you get my question, David? You know what I'm trying to say? It's like why you need both?
Yeah, I hear it.
Yaakov, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What's the trepidation for not entering into the philosophy of a sugya? Then what's the?
That's a bigger question than I'm prepared to tackle right now. Let's keep our focus here, and maybe we can discuss after. Okay.
It basically depends on the sugya.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I think it's going to take us off track. So let's discuss afterwards, maybe. Okay. All right, you guys want to think about it a little bit? You want to talk it out?
Nope.
No thinking? No thinking for today?
You know.
Yaakov's a little torn, I think.
Not Lishma. The search is not as fun yet as the actual discovery.
I hear you.
Unfortunately.
I've been there.
Yeah. It's good to know you've departed from.
There's a point of frustration, and then you make jumps. It happens. It happens. It happens a little suddenly sometimes. Like, oh, I'm better at this than I thought I was. You know, it more enjoyable than I thought it was. It happens. Just give it a little time. All right, so you guys want to hear what I'm thinking about it, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you what we thought. You know, when we went over this when we learned it on Sukkot. And then I just want to make a point about the order in which I presented this whole thing so far. There's more to do. You gotta get back to Rashi, right? But I just want to make a point. I'm going to give this idea, and I want to make a point about just the order that I'm doing it in. Okay. So in terms of this question about why is this recording? Yeah. Okay. So in terms of this question about why you have both the Chefza and the Gavra, right? Why you have the requirement of the Gavra and this phenomenon of the Chefza. Okay. So I think you gotta go a little bit back to something like an aspect of the nature of mitzvahs lulav. What is the mitzvah? Okay. So Yaakov mentioned before that he mentioned the niyanuim, right? The shaking of the lulav, right? So really, the basic mitzvah of lulav, if you just do this, your yotzei is all you have to do is pick up. When I say lulav now, I mean all the minim. I don't mean lulav specifically. I just mean sometimes we call it mitzvahs lulav, but all of them, you know, the dal minim. The basic requirement is all you have to do is pick it up. Pick it up, put it down, you're yotzei. You did your mitzvah. You're not navarian, okay? But we do other things with it too. You guys know, right? We pick it up before Hallel. We take it, we hold it during Hallel, and we shake it. We go right back, front, right, left, right, over our shoulders, right? Well, the whole thing. So, and that's called niyanua. That's called shaking the lulav, right? And that's, we'll call it a very important kiyum in lulav. How important it is its own sugya. Not our issue right now. I'm trying to bring it in for a specific purpose, but it's an essential component. Let's say without it, you're still yotzei. So essential is a little bit of a funny word, but it's an integral component. Maybe that's better. It's very tied to the basic mitzvah. Okay, I'll give you a raya that it's true. The length of the lulav, in order for it to be kosher, has to be long enough that you could do the shaking, right? So if shaking was just kind of an extraneous, who cares about it type of kiyum, you know, not so important, then it wouldn't be part of the basic sheer, you know, length of the lulav itself. You know what I mean? So I'm just using that to show that it's an important part of the mitzvah itself, even if it's not absolutely necessary. So what is shaking? What is shaking the lulav? So when you shake the lulav, the way the Gemara expresses it, you go backwards and forwards and up and down and back and molichu maybe malamor. It means you put it forwards and bring it back, and you go up and you go down. What would you say, Yaakov? Sorry.
Yeah. No.
Okay, you got it. So that procedure, going like backwards, forwards, up and down, is found in one other place very prominently in the Torah, and it's by certain karbanos. That certain karbanos, the Kohen takes the animal and he waves it up and down and front, forwards, and backwards. You guys familiar with this? It's called tenufa.
There's a Kohen with huge biceps.
Yes. So what can we infer from that? So I think what we can infer is that it's not the same as a carbon, but taking the lulav is a certain type of avoda, l'fnei Hashem. It's an avoda, it's a service to God. Now, in a certain sense, in a very generic sense, every mitzvah is an avoda to God, but in a more particular sense, in a more specialized sense, lulav is a certain type of service. It's an avoda in front of God. Okay? And in fact, there's a Gemara in Tainus which says that when you pick up the lulav, it's an avoda which is trying to like obtain ritzui al hamayim. It's trying to get God's grace on water, on rain for the year. Okay, so the bottom line is that's a certain type of avoda. Okay, now in the Beis Hamikdash, when you bring a carbon, when you're doing an avoda to God, avoda has to be done in a very specific type of way. The animal that you bring and the way that you bring it has to be done in a way which there's no mumin. There's no, right? It can't be defective in any way, right? You guys are familiar with this, right? A carbon that has a mum is a problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, if you guys see Parak Ches Halacha Tes in the Rambam, Yaakov, can you read it? You have the Rambam's printed out? The Rambam talks about the different psulim in lulav that he's mentioned so far, and how does he categorize them? Ches Tes?
Okay. Kol elu shamranu Hashem, Absulim mipnei mumen shedarnu or mipnei gezel.
All right, let's go slow. Let's maybe start again. Go slow.
Kol elu shamranu.
Right, shamarnu.
Shamarnu b'shem. Absulim mipnei mumen.
All right, so it's kol elu shamarnu shehem psulim mipnei mumin shebe'arnu.
Okay.
So all of these, basically all the halachos he's brought till now in this parak, all these things that we've discussed, which are pasul in the Daled Minim, because of various types of mumin, of defects, shebe arnu, that we expressed, mishmine gezel or gneva, and he goes into different things. But that's enough for me. The only reason I'm bringing it is to point out that the various psulim by Lulav are referred to by the Rambam as, what does he call them? Mumin. He calls them a mum. He says that these various types of problems with the Lulav are defects. And he uses, I don't think it's a coincidence that he uses the same word for defect as we see by karbanos, by avoda. Because Lulav, like we've said for the last couple of minutes, Lulav is a type of avoda. Okay? Got it? Now in avoda, because there's a very specific way that it has to be done and you're approaching God, the whole thing has to be done in the most proper way. The requirement for things to be done properly permeates the whole system. What do I mean by that? It has to be that the object that you bring is a perfect object, a beautiful object, and the way that you bring it, the approach of the gavra who's doing the avoda, has to be that he's doing it in a way that's beautiful. So we have a better sense now. I'm basically trying to answer the question that we've been leaving off with. Why should it be that by this mitzvah we have hidur both as a requirement in that the gavra has to pursue and in the chefza? So I'm saying since lulav is an avoda, it makes sense that should be. Because in avoda, the requirement that it be done perfectly permeates the whole system. Because avoda is a very special procedure where you're approaching God. So it has to be both the thing that you're bringing and you have to be doing it in a way which is like completely proper. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Tamir, make sense?
Kind of.
Kind of? Okay, you got a question on it or you want to think about it a little bit?
I can just repeat it quickly.
Sure. So you know the question that we're dealing with? Why it should be that you need hidur in both from the gavra and that hidur is a psul and the chefza, right? Basically, why is there a requirement for hidur, both from the perspective of the guy and in the entity
Why
itself?
do we need both? Basically?
Yeah, why you have both frameworks.
Yeah, okay.
So what I'm saying is that we've spent the last 3 or 4 minutes trying to show that lulav, mitzvah lulav isn't simply a mitzvah, it's a type of avoda, it's a type of service to God. And just like by karbanos, there's this phenomenon of mum, where the thing that you bring and the way that you bring it in has to be done in this perfect, almost beautified kind of way. By Lulav, by Lulav and the others, by Daled Minim also, the reason it have both of these frameworks is that this requirement and the way you do this avoda, both in terms of you, the gavra, and what you're bringing, has to be done perfectly, because it's an avoda. Right? So that explains why you have this requirement for hidur, both from the gavra's perspective, that he do it in a way that's beautiful, and that the thing itself has to be mihudar, has to be beautiful.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, David, you kind of there?
Because you're presenting it to God.
Okay, sure. Say it again.
That is because you're presenting it to God.
Yeah, because you're doing it as an avoda to God, right? It's kind of it's just reminiscent of by Cain and Havel, right? Cain brought stuff to God that wasn't the best stuff, and that was a problem. You got and
Right.
what you do and the way you do it, and right, both the thing you're bringing and the way you're bringing the gavra and the thing itself have to be beautiful in front of God because it's an avoda.
Right.
Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, Dylan, you there?
No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like I mentioned a minute ago, I just wanted to... How much time we got? 15 minutes. Okay. So methodologically, and this is kind of a little bit of a discussion point, and I'm happy to kind of talk it out. I don't want to throw this in your faces. Tell me what you guys think about this, and we can discuss. So methodologically, there's kind of a certain setup that I tried to present these ideas in so far. We still have Rashi. I'm not trying. This isn't an end of this year, but I just wanted to stop and make a point. The way I kind of tried to go through and deal with these questions 3 and 4 was by kind of setting up first the logical categories that we're using and that we thought we were using, that maybe we shouldn't be using, and kind of overturning our original premises, going from thinking it's a psul and the chefza to bringing in the requirement of the gavra, to going to saying that maybe you have a requirement of the gavra and a psul and the chefza, right? Everything we've been saying, right? So first we pursued that, and then we went into the question of, well, why should it be that this is the case by Daled Minim, by Lulav, right? Why should it be that you have both of these frameworks, of the gavra and the chefza? Tamir, you know what you're right? You following? Yeah? David, you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in learning, it doesn't always happen in that order. It's not so rigorously or sort of
Systematic.
I don't know if that's the word I would use. I guess it's not so separately structured, where first you deal kind of with your logical categories and you say, okay, this is my logical categorization. Now let me see what's the motivation, why those categories sort of make any sense. Why should it be that it exists in both of these frameworks, We did it, the way we did it, I did it in that order because I think it's I don't know if it's more important, but I think it's important for you guys to kind of see the logical steps in and of themselves, and then kind of see the motivation. I think that's maybe helpful for you. Maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong, but that's what I thought would be most helpful for you guys. But when you're thinking about the problem itself, kind of, in this type of situation, a lot of times one will sort of impact and feed off of the other. When we were preparing this on Sukkot, me and my dad and my brother-in-law, so when we came up with this idea about these different frameworks and how it's both a requirement of the Gavra and of the and a Psul and the Chefza, I think part of what spurred us on to that way of thinking was the knowledge that Lulav is an avoda, right? Is like we've been saying, and therefore it's reasonable to say that it should be both the Gavra, a requirement for the Gavra and a Psul in the Chefza. So it's sort of these different ways of different things that we're dealing with, the logical structure and the reasonability and the kind of the motivation and the insight into the mitzvah that we get from the logical structure, they help each other, right? Because we know something about mitzvahs lulav, maybe if you already have ideas that you've accumulated in your prior learning about mitzvahs lulav, those might help you and inform you about what the logical structure could be. And in turn, when you come up with an idea about the logical structure and you consider, why is that reasonable? Why should that be? That might give you insight into the mitzvah. They kind of, one can help the other, and sometimes you kind of deal with both and come up with both in conjunction. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to just kind of prevent a misconception about the way that you don't have to go in this sort of rigorously separate order, first dealing with the logics and then dealing with the reasonability and the insight into the mitzvah.
Right.
You know what I mean, Yaakov? Say it again?
It could be a two-way street.
It could be
a two-way street.
It could be a two-way street, exactly. And it could be that you're going both ways on the street at the same time. Like it could be that you're dealing with both and learning about both while you're doing one thing. It could be that a lot of times one idea, you kind of, it's not so linear, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm having a little bit of a hard time expressing it, but it's not so linear that you move from first you got linear like in a line, it's not first you get your logical construction, then you're going to your reason. It's almost like it's a cloud of ideas sometimes, and like you're just kind of there, you're thinking about the problems that you decide to think about, and then you think about, what type of mitzvah is this? What logical structures might emerge from thinking that it's that type of mitzvah? Or what logical structures could be here? What might that mean about the mitzvah? Why it's reasonable? And you kind of play with it, it's almost like taking Play-Doh and just like maneuvering it, playing with it till you emerge with something. But it's not, that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not really a linear process, necessarily. You know what I mean, Tamir? Yeah? Okay.